This story didn't happen to me directly. It happened to my mother when she was a teenager. She's in her mid-60s now, and to this day, she refuses to talk about it unless asked directly. My mom isn't what most people would call religious. She doesn't go to church often, doesn't read the Bible regularly, and never tries to preach anything to anyone. But she does pray every night before sleeping, not out of obligation, but because it gives her a sense of calm. When I was growing up, we used to watch horror movies together occasionally. Nothing extreme, no gore or graphic stuff, just the usual creepy, suspenseful kind of movies. She never had an issue with ghosts, haunted houses, or psychological thrillers. But there was one very specific line she would never cross. Anything involving possession, demons, or exorcisms was completely off limits. I learned this the hard way when I once asked her if she wanted to watch The Exorcist. I didn't even finish the sentence before she shut it down. Not a maybe, not a let's see, just a firm, absolute no. She said there was no chance she would ever watch anything like that. That reaction surprised me. Later, when the movie Constantine came out, I showed her the trailer, thinking maybe something more action-based would be okay. She watched quietly, until the scene where the possessed girl starts crawling across the ceiling. She didn't say a word. She just walked away. There was something about that moment that made it clear this wasn't just fear from movies. It was personal. Another important thing about my mom, she absolutely despises Ouija boards. And I don't mean mild discomfort. If someone even jokes about bringing one into her house, she loses her temper instantly. She'll yell, swear, and shut the conversation down completely. If you pushed it any further, she'd probably kick you out. No discussions, no second chances. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I asked her why she reacted so strongly to all of it. Possessions, exorcisms, Ouija boards. She was quiet for a long time before answering. Then she told me a story she hadn't shared in years. When she was a teenager, she stayed over at a friend's house one night. It was a normal sleepover. A group of girls hanging out, laughing, playing games on the living room floor while the parents sat nearby watching TV. At some point, one of her friends pulled out a board game my mom had never seen before. She didn't recognize it, and no one explained what it really was. They just said it was fun. They started playing. Only later did she realize it was a Ouija board. At first, it seemed harmless. They placed their hands on the planchette and asked silly questions, laughing whenever it moved. My mom assumed someone was pushing it around as a joke. Then the questions changed. They asked if there was a spirit in the house. The board responded. That's when the mood shifted. Nervous laughter filled the room. Someone dared whatever they were talking to. If something really was there, it should prove it. Nothing happened at first, so they demanded it. The moment those words left their mouths, every light in the house went out simultaneously. Not just the room they were in, every single room. The television shut off too. Complete darkness. Then, just as suddenly, everything turned back on. Someone laughed and said it must have been a power issue. A coincidence. A fluke. But my mom said she felt it immediately. Something was wrong. They asked the next question. Who are you? The planchette began moving in large, slow circles, far more deliberately than before. It stopped briefly, then slid across the board, spelling out letters one by one. D, E, V, I, L. No one spoke. Someone accused another of pushing it. Everyone swore they weren't. Then someone challenged it. If that's really who you are, show yourself. The TV turned off again. This time, no one laughed. In the dark reflection of the screen, my mom said everyone could see it. Her friends, and even the parents. A shape sitting there with them. Not clearly defined, but unmistakably there. Something that didn't belong. The air in the house turned ice cold. Not slowly, instantly. Then came the noise. From the kitchen, loud crashes echoed through the house. Cupboard doors slammed open and shut violently. Objects flew off the top of the refrigerator and hit the floor. That was it. They shut the board, wrapped it up, and threw it straight into the trash. No goodbyes. No closing rituals. They just wanted it gone. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, my mom woke up suddenly. There was a loud scraping sound above her. Heavy, metallic clanging. She listened carefully and realized it sounded like chains being dragged. Then she heard growling. Dogs. Multiple dogs, pacing back and forth across the roof. She told herself it had to be outside. It didn't make sense otherwise. The next morning, she asked her friend's parents if any neighbors nearby owned dogs. They told her no. Then they said something that made her stomach drop. They heard the dogs and chains too, on the roof. That is why my mother refuses to watch anything involving exorcisms or possession. She truly believes that whatever they contacted that night wasn't pretending. She believes it was sitting right beside them. And the most unsettling part? Every time she tells me this story, I feel an intense, cold shiver crawl down my spine. Not fear from the story itself, but from the certainty in her voice. There's no hesitation, no exaggeration, and deep down, I know she isn't making it up. About 4 years ago, I was finishing my freshman year of college. I'd spent the year living in the dorms with an amazing roommate, and honestly, the experience had been great overall. I loved dorm life. I had friends on my hall, classes were manageable, and nothing about my situation felt negative or unstable. But toward the end of the semester, something changed. There was a shift in the atmosphere of our hallway. Everyone was still joking around, hanging out, being ourselves. But the moment you walked into the hall, you could feel it. A deep, heavy sense of dread that didn't belong there. It wasn't panic or fear exactly, more like the quiet certainty that something was wrong. We chalked it up to finals. Stress, lack of sleep, pressure, it was the logical explanation. Still, the feeling never really went away. One night, after a long study session, I decided to take a shower so I could crash for a few hours and wake up just in time for class. Before I go any further, it's important to explain the layout of our hall and bathroom because it plays a huge role in what happened. Our dorm floor was divided into several halls. Each hall had 4 rooms, usually housing 2 students each, though sometimes one was reserved for an RA. The entrance to each hall was sealed by a massive steel door with a small reinforced window near the top. Directly across from that door was the communal bathroom. The whole setup felt less like student housing and more like a prison wing. Inside the bathroom, the layout was symmetrical and unsettling. As soon as you walked in, there were 2 sets of sinks, 2 on the left wall and 2 on the right. Each set had a large mirror mounted above it, facing the other mirror, creating that infinite tunnel effect where reflections repeat endlessly. Past the sinks, on the left side, were 2 urinals and a toilet stall. On the right side were 2 shower stalls. Here's the part that still messes with me. If you stood at the left sinks and looked into the mirror, you could clearly see into the shower area behind you, as long as the shower door was open. From the right sinks, you could also see the showers reflected back at you. The bathroom door itself was just as heavy as the hall entrance. Thick steel with a narrow window that barely showed anything. It was kept open using a massive wooden wedge that you couldn't move accidentally. You had to intentionally force the door closed. That night, I was completely alone in the bathroom. I set my clean clothes down on the right side sink so I could grab them easily once I finished showering. As I adjusted my things, I happened to glance up at the mirror. That's when I saw something. Far back in the reflection, inside the shower stall, there was something shimmering. At first, I couldn't tell what it was, just a distortion, like heat rising off pavement. As I stared, it moved. Not walking, jumping. It seemed to move from one layer of reflection to the next, getting closer each time. I felt uneasy, but I told myself it was nothing. I'd been riding a brutal mix of Red Bull, Adderall, and caffeine for days. My brain was fried. Hallucinations weren't impossible, but then it started moving faster. With each jump closer in the mirror, more detail came into view. Still nothing clear, just a dark shape, vaguely human, surrounded by what looked like hair. By then, I was panicking. I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. I was frozen in place as it continued closing the distance. When it reached what I'd call the 4th layer of reflection, I saw it clearly, and I wish I hadn't. What I thought was hair wasn't hair at all. It looked like a long, flowing veil. You could partially see through it, but below the torso, the figure was solid black, like a shadow with weight. The face, I still can't describe it properly. It was human, but twisted in a way that made my brain reject it. The eyes were black, but they glowed, subtly, unnaturally. I saw it for maybe a second. That second is burned into my memory permanently. The lights went out. The bathroom door slammed shut. Everything went pitch black. I tried to open the door. It wouldn't move. Then the smell hit me. Blood. Strong. Metallic. Overwhelming. That's the last thing I remember. I woke up later in the hospital. According to my RA, he had gone to use the bathroom sometime after all this happened. He found me collapsed inside a shower stall, my shirt soaked in blood from a severe nosebleed. He tried asking me what happened. Apparently, the only thing I kept saying was, "It saw me." Then I started screaming. He called an ambulance immediately. On the way to the hospital, I was so panicked that the paramedics had to sedate me. I started coming around as my parents arrived. They were terrified, confused, desperate for answers. The doctors initially thought I'd had a seizure. But once I was calm enough, they ran CAT scans and found no evidence that one had occurred. I've never had epilepsy, and it doesn't run in my family. I'd taken Adderall many times before, and since, and I've never experienced hallucinations or seizure-like symptoms before or after that night. To this day, I can't look into a mirror for more than a minute. Being stuck in a room with one for too long causes me to shut down completely. I've been in therapy for nearly 3 years because of this. I've spoken to multiple religious leaders as well. None of them recognize the experience as fitting any known pattern of demonic or paranormal activity. And here's the strangest part. Before that incident, there were no reports of anything unusual in that dorm. And after I left, nothing. No stories, no rumors, no repeat incidents. It was completely isolated, just that one night. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, my family lived in a small, tucked-away neighborhood at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. It wasn't the kind of place people passed through. It felt hidden, almost intentionally removed from the rest of the area. The house itself wasn't unusual, but the backyard was massive, much larger than any of the others nearby. Despite all that space, there was one specific area none of us ever went near. In one far corner of the yard sat an old, rusted flatbed trailer, the type used to tow dirt bikes or heavy equipment. It looked like it had been sitting there for years, slowly rotting into the ground. Something about that corner of the yard felt wrong. Not just creepy in a childish way, but deeply unsettling. We never played there. We never explored it. And even our dog refused to go anywhere near it. If a ball rolled too close to that corner, we'd abandon it without a second thought. My 2 younger sisters shared a bedroom at the time. Every now and then, usually late at night, they would come into my room and ask if they could sleep there. They said strange lights would appear in their room, lights that didn't make sense and didn't behave normally. My parents brushed it off, saying it was probably just street lights shining through the windows or reflections from passing cars. At the time, I believed them. Then one night, something happened to me directly. I woke up suddenly with a feeling I had never experienced before. It wasn't fear. It was anger. Not my anger, but the overwhelming sensation of being close to something that was intensely, violently angry. The kind of anger you feel when you're standing next to someone who is absolutely furious. The kind of rage that feels dangerous just to be near. I opened my eyes. There was the outline of a person standing in my bedroom doorway. The shape wasn't clear or detailed, but it was undeniably human. And within that shape was a single red, glowing point, like the burning tip of a cigarette in the dark. Both of my parents smoked, so my first thought was that one of them had come into my room. I sat up in bed and quietly said, "Mom? Dad?" There was no answer. Before I could say anything else, the figure vanished. The red glow disappeared instantly, as if it had never been there. I reacted purely on instinct. I pulled the blankets over my head and curled up as tightly as I could, pressing myself into the mattress, trying to disappear. That's when I felt it. A tug. Something pulled at the blankets near the foot of the bed. I yanked them back toward myself. There was another pull, stronger this time. I was completely terrified. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. All I could do was grip the blankets with everything I had, holding on as if letting go meant something horrible would happen. After a moment, the tugging stopped. I stayed frozen in place, heart pounding, muscles locked, afraid that if I moved even slightly it would start again. Eventually, exhaustion overtook fear, and I fell asleep. The next morning, I told my parents exactly what happened. They both said they had slept through the entire night and hadn't been in my room at all. They assured me it must have been a nightmare. I wanted to believe them. Years went by. Nearly 20 years later, I realized I still dreamed about that house. The dreams weren't random. They always focused on specific places within it. Most of all, the corner of the house where the garage had been converted into a den. In my dreams, that area didn't look like a room anymore. It looked like a void, a black hole. Even though the house was only one story, I would dream about running downstairs into that den. In every dream, I knew, without anyone telling me, that if I got too close to that darkness, something evil would take me. Sometimes the dreams expanded beyond the house itself. In those dreams, I'd run to other houses in the neighborhood for help. But I always knew, again, without explanation, that if I went inside any of them, I would die. One night, as an adult, my younger sister and I were talking with our mom about the old house. The conversation drifted naturally, casually, until my mom began describing dreams she used to have while we lived there. My stomach dropped as she spoke. Her dreams were almost exactly like mine. She described running downstairs into the kitchen, where the cabinet doors would open and slam shut on their own. She also talked about seeing a man standing in the den, right in the same area where I always saw the darkness. None of us had ever talked about these dreams before. Not once. All three of us sat there afterward, deeply unsettled by the realization that we had been experiencing the same fear in different ways. I've driven past that house a few times since then. Every time I enter that neighborhood, I feel it again. That same heavy, oppressive sensation, like something watching from just out of sight. I don't know what was wrong with that place, but sometimes I can't help wondering. Maybe it was built on something it shouldn't have been. This isn't the average Reddit horror story with ghosts in the hallway, shadow figures in the corner of the room, or something watching from the dark. There were no demons, no haunted houses, no glowing eyes staring back at me. Honestly, I wish there had been. I wish the terror I lived through had been something supernatural, something I could explain away as not real. But this story isn't about ghosts. It's about my childhood. It's about the trauma I survived, the fear that followed me every day, and the kind of horror that doesn't disappear when the lights turn on. I was 7 years old when my mother started using drugs. I didn't understand it at the time. I was a kid, and kids don't have the language for things like addiction. Years later, she told me it began with prescription pills, OxyContin, and others like it. In the beginning, it didn't seem catastrophic. It wasn't good, but it wasn't the end of the world either. Over time, though, the pills weren't enough anymore. Pills turned into heroin. Later, heroin mixed with crack. Around that same period, my father crossed a line he had never crossed before. The first time he ever hit me happened over something incredibly small. I wouldn't clean my cousin's room. That was it. He grabbed me by my arms, lifted me off the ground, and swung me across the room. Afterwards, he bought me McDonald's. As if that erased what had happened. I was a resilient kid. I accepted it, ate my food, and told myself I was fine. Not long after, my mother lost our childhood home. We moved into a house that was barely furnished. Sometimes she wouldn't wake up. Sometimes there wasn't food. I was 7. My brother was 4. Somehow, even then, I was still happy. Children are remarkably good at adapting to things they shouldn't have to survive. When I was 9, I went to live with my father. Everyone agreed it was for obvious reasons. Looking back, I wish every day that I had been left with my mother instead. After that first incident years earlier, my father hadn't touched me again, until this point. I don't remember what I did to make him angry. What I remember is a screwdriver flying through the air and slicing my knee open. At first, the violence wasn't constant. A slap here, something thrown there. It was unpredictable but spaced out enough that I could still pretend it wasn't my normal. That changed when he started dating the woman who would later become his wife. That's when everything escalated. He got a cat. One day, the cat did something that angered him. He grabbed it and threw it against the wall. Again and again, I screamed at him to stop. He responded by kicking me so hard I flew into the wall myself. The cat died. Then he got a dog. One day, we were gone for nearly 12 hours. When we came home, the dog had pooped on the floor. That should have been expected. We'd been gone all day. My father beat that dog until she was nearly dead. He flung her through the air while she lost control of her bowels from fear and pain. We didn't know it at the time, but the dog, Sheba, was pregnant. Not long after that, she gave birth to 5 or 6 puppies. All of them were stillborn. My father put their bodies into a Kroger bag and told me to take it to the trash. I couldn't do it. I was crying so hard I could barely stand. I couldn't carry a bag full of dead puppies. He kicked me down the stairs and threw the bag at me. I picked it up and took it to the trash. Another night, I was woken up on a school night by my father and stepmother having sex. I didn't know what to do. I was embarrassed and overwhelmed. I threw a Beanie Baby at their door. My father came into my room and beat me with it. People laugh when they hear that part, but they don't understand how much it hurts when a 6-foot, 300-pound man is beating a 9-year-old with anything. By the time I turned 10, the abuse became almost daily. I got lice once. While he was checking my head, he slammed my face into the table. If I washed a dish wrong, he wouldn't say anything right away. He would wait until night, until I was asleep, and wake me up by beating me. A lot of it blends together, punching, kicking, being dragged by my hair, but some moments are burned into my memory. Once, he had me outside breaking down a pile of sticks and logs. I did it for days. After a week, exhausted, I asked if I could have one day off. He shoved a broom handle into my throat. I collapsed on the ground, gasping, unable to breathe. I remember lying there like a fish out of water, choking, while my father stood over me watching. Eventually, he decided I was allowed to breathe again and massaged my throat until the gasping stopped. I truly believed I was going to die that day. Another time, we were in a McDonald's drive-thru. I was in the back seat, reading quietly. Without warning, he ripped the broken lid off the center console and slammed it into the side of my head. I saw stars. He screamed that he had told me to stop humming. I wasn't humming. After we moved into a new house, I discovered our neighbors were childhood friends from before everything fell apart. I was so excited. I wasn't allowed outside, but one day I leaned out my bedroom window and talked to them, catching up. He must have heard my voice. He burst into my room, grabbed me by the hair, and slammed me into the wall. That house may still have a child-sized dent in the closet. Once, he hit me in the head with a board that had nails sticking out of it. I was lucky it didn't do more damage. There was so much blood. Another time, he took a drill to my leg. I still have a perfectly circular scar on my shin. When I was 12, I tried to kill myself. I made a noose out of a belt and tried to hang myself in the closet. The bar broke. That failure saved my life. I was always hungry. I was given the same amount of food as my 5-year-old stepsister. Hunger drove me to sneak food at night. That always got me into trouble. Eventually, my stepsisters learned that if they got into anything, the blame would automatically fall on me. Once, they got into my stepmother's tampons and scattered them across my bedroom floor. I was stomped for that. Another time, they ate butter straight from the container with their fingers. Somehow, that was also my fault. Even though I was 8 years older, my fingers were clearly bigger, and I didn't even like butter. This is only the physical abuse. I'm not even touching the mental and verbal cruelty. My real name wasn't used for years. He sent me into stores to steal for him. By 13, it reached its worst point. My bedroom door was deadbolt shut, with 2 different locks, because I had figured out the first. My windows were nailed shut. I had a bucket in my closet to use as a toilet. My bed was 2 couch cushions on the floor. Sometimes they forgot to unlock my door in the morning. That's why the bucket existed. That's how I learned to pick locks. Before the windows were nailed shut, I climbed out of my 2nd-story window and crawled back into the house through an unlocked dining room window just so I could use the bathroom. Knowing I wouldn't be able to pee for hours or the entire day pushed me to desperate measures. Everything came to a head when I got suspended from school. The reason was stupid. I had printed a poem about a teacher being a dinosaur nobody liked, but I knew what suspension meant. I was sure I wouldn't survive the night, so I didn't go home. I got off the bus and wandered. I walked across the west side of the city and back again. As it got dark and hunger set in, I went to Kroger, planning to steal something to eat. Inside, I ran into a friend from school. I begged her and her mother to let me stay the night. I told them everything. They called the police. The police took me home. My father explained my injuries away as clumsiness. The only thing they addressed was the locks and nails, saying they were a fire hazard and had to be removed. It was around 9 or 10 at night. I was terrified, suspended, ran away, told the police. I was sure I would die, or at least be badly hurt. I hadn't believed in God for years. But that night, I prayed harder than I ever had. I begged to be taken away. I begged not to die. Around midnight, my father told me to get in the car. He dropped me off at a halfway house for troubled teens. I stayed there for almost 2 weeks. No one hit me. I wasn't hungry. The adults cared. I dreaded the day he would come back to take me home. That day never came. Instead, they told me my mother was there to pick me up. I hadn't seen her in nearly 5 years, so I assumed they meant my stepmother. When I saw my real mom, clean, sober, waiting for me, I broke down. She saved my life. She relapsed later, when I was 17. By then, I could fend for myself. Life hasn't been easy. But now I have a 10-year-old daughter. She is safe. She is loved. And she will never experience what I survived. I broke the cycle. When I was around 8 or 9 years old, my family lived in a house my father had built himself in a very remote part of Indiana. There were no nearby neighbors, no streetlights, and no sense of being connected to anything outside our property. It felt isolated in a way that was both peaceful and unsettling. My parents owned a small business, and because of it, clients would sometimes travel long distances to meet with them at our home. Over the years, I met plenty of unusual people, but one visitor stands out more than anyone else. And even now, decades later, I can still picture him clearly. The moment I saw him, something felt wrong. He arrived in a black car with darkly tinted windows. He was dressed entirely in black clothes, black hat, dark sunglasses. His movements were stiff, deliberate, and his presence alone made my stomach knot up. I didn't know why. I was just a child, but every instinct I had screamed that I should stay away from him. What made things worse was his fixation on our cat. We had a black Persian cat named Mercedes. She was gentle, affectionate, and usually indifferent to strangers. But this man showed an unusual interest in her. He watched her closely, asked questions about her, and kept trying to interact with her in a way that made everyone uncomfortable. Eventually, his meeting with my parents ended, and he left. That evening, during dinner, everyone admitted the same thing. Something about that man had deeply unsettled them. That night, Mercedes became violently ill. Over the next few days, her condition worsened rapidly. The local veterinarian couldn't explain what was happening. She was vomiting thick, black substance that looked like tar, far more than any animal her size should have been able to produce. Nothing helped. In her final moments, Mercedes began swatting at the air and hissing as if something invisible was right in front of her. She looked terrified. I remember the exact moment she died, the sudden stillness, the silence afterward, and the icy chill that ran through me as if the room itself had changed. After that, things in the house began to go wrong. We started finding footprints in the snow outside, prints that would appear suddenly and then vanish without leading anywhere. Doors would creak open on their own. Noises echoed through the house late at night when everyone was asleep. Wallpaper was torn halfway off the walls as if something had ripped at it in anger. My mother, who had always been sensitive and intuitive, started acting differently. She became withdrawn and anxious. She told my father that she was seeing things, creatures she described as demonic, lurking in corners or watching from the edges of rooms. Around the same time, my asthma returned. I hadn't had an attack in a long while, but suddenly they came back, worse than before. One night, I became so sick that I slept on the floor beside my mother's side of the bed in my parents' room. The space under and around their bed was cluttered with boxes, old photographs, wrapping paper, and other things we hadn't stored away yet. That night, I had one of the worst asthma attacks of my life. I remember struggling to breathe, the tightness in my chest growing unbearable. Then I heard my mother wake up screaming, "Get away from her." She tried to get out of bed, but she couldn't reach me. Every single box that had been under the bed and scattered around the room had been stacked into a solid barrier between my mother and where I lay on the floor. It was impossible. There was no sound of movement, no warning, just an impossible wall blocking her path. She fought through it, somehow moving the boxes enough to reach me. She gave me my inhaler and held me as I struggled to breathe. She cried the rest of the night. She never told me what she saw. The strange occurrences continued for several more months. We had the house blessed. We tried everything we could think of. Slowly, whatever was happening began to fade. The activity lessened, then nearly stopped. Today, my brother and his family live in that house. They still hear unexplained sounds from time to time, but nothing like what happened that winter. I grew up to be a skeptic. I don't believe easily. I question everything. But no matter how hard I try, I still can't fully explain what happened during that year. So I tell myself the only thing I can, that it was all in our heads. Even though, deep down, I'm not sure I believe that. When I first moved away for college, I didn't immediately have a place of my own. For the first few months, I stayed with a distant relative, the widow of my grandmother's cousin, if I remember the family connection correctly. To keep things simple, I'll just call her my grandaunt. The house was old. not falling apart, but old in the way that feels like it's been quietly observing people for decades. My room was on the second floor, and that floor only had 3 spaces: my bedroom, a guest room that no one ever used and gave off an unmistakably uncomfortable vibe, and a locked storage room that looked like it had been abandoned for years. Almost every night, usually sometime between 1 and 2 in the morning, I would hear footsteps coming up the stairs. They were slow, deliberate steps, the kind you expect from an elderly person. Sometimes the footsteps would move back and forth along the short hallway. Other times, I'd hear a door open and close, usually the guest room. I assumed it was my grandaunt. Old people sleep lightly, I told myself. Maybe she was restless. Maybe she just wandered around at night. It made sense at the time. That assumption lasted until the day she went out of town. She told me she'd be gone for a few days, and I would have the house to myself. The first night passed normally, or so I thought. The footsteps came, just like always. What unsettled me wasn't that I heard them. It was that I didn't realize anything was wrong until the second day. That's how used to the sound I had become. Once it finally clicked that I was completely alone in the house, the realization hit me all at once. The footsteps weren't familiar anymore. They didn't sound human. They sounded wrong. Hollow. Too consistent. Too calm. The walking never stopped. Not once. Oddly enough, I never felt like I was in immediate danger. If anything, I convinced myself it had to be my granduncle, my grandaunt's late husband. The idea felt oddly comforting, even rational, compared to other possibilities. What really shook me was when my mother came to visit. One night, while I was away camping with friends, my mom stayed in my room. When I got back, she asked me, very casually, why someone walks around upstairs so late at night. I hadn't told her anything. She heard the footsteps too. There was another incident that still bothers me when I think about it. One night, I was studying for an exam and stayed up until nearly 4 in the morning. I heard the footsteps again, moving up the stairs like always. There's a belief in my culture that spirits are most active between 6 in the evening and 3 in the morning. If you wake up around 3, you're not supposed to look around. Just close your eyes and go back to sleep. By the time I heard the footsteps, it was already past that window. For some reason, that made me feel confident, almost cocky. When the walking reached the second floor, I opened my door and rushed toward the stairs. I didn't see anything, but the moment I stepped out, I heard something else. Running. Fast footsteps racing down the stairs. Then a door slammed shut downstairs. I froze. After that night, the footsteps continued, but I stopped reacting to them. I told myself that whatever it was, we'd already established boundaries, that I wasn't afraid anymore. I ignored it completely from then on. Years later, relatives who stayed at the house reported the same thing. Footsteps at night. Slow walking upstairs. The same hallway. If someone can explain how a hallucination can be shared by multiple people across different years, I'd genuinely love to hear it. There was one more incident, just once, but it was enough. I had a friend over one evening. It was around 8 at night when we both heard a male voice. It was close, hushed, and urgent. The voice said something that, in my language, can mean either be careful or take care. It repeated the phrase twice. We both heard it. We searched the guest room immediately. Nothing was there. The storage room was locked and inaccessible, so we couldn't check inside. That night, I slept with a knife within arm's reach. I kept it there for a full week. My husband and I live out in the countryside in a fairly large detached house, along with our dog Balu. A few months back, my husband had to leave town for the weekend, which meant I would be staying there alone with the dog. Being by myself in such a quiet, isolated place made me slightly uncomfortable, but Balu's presence helped ease my nerves a bit. Late one night, sometime around 2 in the morning, I was jolted awake by an unfamiliar sound. It was faint at first, like something lightly scraping or clawing at a surface. I've always been a very light sleeper, so even small noises tend to wake me. Still half asleep, I assumed it was probably an animal, maybe a marten or something similar, scratching somewhere outside. I got out of bed and went to shut the window, only to realize it was already closed. That's when I noticed something unsettling. The noise wasn't coming from outdoors at all. It was inside the house. My first thought was that Balu must be pawing at the bedroom door, wanting to be let in. I opened the door that led into the living room, expecting to see him there. Instead, Balu was already lying in his bed, wide awake. ears stiff and alert, staring directly at me. At that point, any trace of sleepiness vanished. The sound grew louder, more deliberate. I reached over and turned on the light in the living room. It seemed like the noise was coming from within the wall itself. My chest tightened, and I stood completely still, barely breathing. Suddenly, Balu leapt to his feet with a low growl, ran straight toward the wall, and began clawing at it aggressively. My fear surged. I remembered that my sister, who lives next door with her family, had told me I could call her anytime if I ever felt unsafe. Since it was a weekend, I thought there was a chance she might still be awake. I hurried back into the bedroom to grab my phone. Just as I was about to dial her number, Balu started barking furiously. I rushed back out and saw him standing at the far end of the living room, focused on the dark hallway. I yelled for him to stop, but he ignored me completely. Then, without warning, he sprinted straight into the hallway. There was a brief moment of silence, followed by a loud crashing sound coming from the direction of the stairs. At that point, I was absolutely certain someone had broken into the house. My heart was racing as I called Balu's name. He came running back toward me, whimpering, clearly distressed. I slammed the bedroom door shut behind us and immediately called emergency services. The house went eerily quiet. The scratching noise had completely stopped. The only sound was Balu softly whining at my side. I told the dispatcher, barely holding myself together, that I believed there was an intruder in my home. They assured me officers were on their way. Trying to calm Balu, I ran my hand along his back. That's when I felt something wet. When I looked closer, I realized he was covered in blood. There was a deep, open gash along his side. I froze in horror. Afraid to leave the room, I grabbed whatever clothes I could find and pressed them against the wound, desperately trying to slow the bleeding. Eventually, the police arrived. Balu was taken straight to an emergency veterinary clinic, and the officers searched the entire house. But they found nothing. There were no signs of forced entry, no damage, nothing out of place. Every door and window was locked. The police told me there was no possible way anyone could have entered the house. I spent the remainder of the night at my sister's place. Thankfully, Balu's injury was treated and stitched up, and he's doing well now. The veterinarian said the wound appeared to have been caused by a powerful external force, similar to injuries seen when an animal has been slashed by something like a bear's claws. Even now, I can't explain what happened that night, and every time I think back on it, a chill runs through me that I can't shake. Both of my brothers, my mother, and my stepfather can all confirm this story. It wasn't something I imagined or experienced alone. We lived through it together. When I was very young, somewhere between 6 and 8 years old, we lived in an old 2-story house that felt unsettling even in daylight. Because the house was so large, a few of my stepfather's friends also lived with us as roommates, which made the place feel crowded but oddly empty at the same time. My bedroom was at the top of the stairs on the left side. It didn't have a door, just an open entryway. My brothers shared a room directly across from mine. The staircase itself had doors at both the top and the bottom, and every single night before going to bed, I made sure they were closed. I was an anxious kid, and somehow those doors made me feel a little safer. What I didn't know at the time was the history of that house. The previous owner, our great-uncle Earl, had taken his own life there. My family never told me when I was young, but years later I learned the truth. He had hanged himself in my bedroom, directly above the spot where I slept every night. Once I found that out, everything suddenly made sense. Almost every night, starting around 10 or 11, we would hear it. The bottom stairwell door never opened. There was no creak, no movement, no sound of a latch. But we would hear heavy footsteps slowly climbing the stairs. Each step was deliberate, measured, loud enough that there was no mistaking them. The footsteps would reach the top of the stairs, move into my room, and then, somehow, they would start all over again from the bottom. This went on until about 4 in the morning, every night, for years. Even now, writing this makes my chest tighten and my stomach drop. That same cold, bone-deep terror comes rushing back, the kind that makes you want to cry and feel like you've just been punched in the gut. My brothers heard it. My mom heard it. My stepdad heard it. My youngest brother would sometimes say he saw people in the house at night, which terrified all of us even more. Looking back, we think he might have been especially sensitive to whatever was there. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door at the top of the stairwell and turned on the light, determined to see who, or what, was coming up the stairs. There was nothing there. No person, no shadow, no movement. The moment the light came on, the footsteps stopped completely. I didn't wait to think. I ran back into my room, dove under my blankets, and curled into myself. Moments later, the footsteps started again at the bottom of the stairs. Eventually, it became so constant that my mom began reacting to it directly. On nights when the activity was especially intense, she would yell up the stairwell, "Go to bed, Earl." And unbelievably, the footsteps would stop. As a family, living in that house shaped us. It left us with a shared fear and a shared fascination with ghosts and whatever might come after death. You can't live through something like that and walk away unchanged. Years later, the house was destroyed in a controlled burn to make room for new suburban development. I went back after it was gone and picked through the rubble. I kept a couple of scorched bricks as keepsakes. I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself that it was real. I will always believe in ghosts now. There's no undoing that. I was spending a week at my friend George's place, and one night we decided to sneak out after everyone had gone to sleep. We grabbed our electric bikes and rode around the neighborhood for a while. Eventually, we ended up hanging around the local high school with a few other kids, just killing time. When it was finally time to head back, our bikes were almost completely dead. George's house wasn't close enough to ride on low battery, so we ditched the bikes and started walking instead. The quickest route back led through a narrow alleyway. During the daytime, that alley was usually fine to walk through, but I had never been there at night. Neither had George. Still, we were pressed for time. His dad had an early work meeting at 6 in the morning, and it was already close to 5, so we didn't have much choice. This was in South Philly, and the area was unnaturally quiet. I know cities can get calm late at night, but this was different. There were no cars at all, no traffic noise, no birds, no people, nothing. It felt completely empty, like the whole block had been abandoned. As we walked deeper into the alley, I was suddenly hit with a feeling I can't really explain. It wasn't just fear, it was like something inside my head flipped a switch. My brain started tingling, almost buzzing, and my stomach dropped. I looked at George and asked if he felt it too. Without hesitation, he said yes. That was enough. We immediately took off running. I've never experienced anything like that before or since. I'm not someone who panics easily, and I don't usually scare like that, but this felt different. It was raw, instinctive, like some primal part of me was screaming that we were in danger and needed to get out immediately. We made it back to the house without anything happening, but the whole experience stuck with us. It didn't feel normal, and neither of us could shake it. The next day, we ended up sneaking out again. This time, we didn't bring the bikes because we'd forgotten to charge them. As we approached the area near the alley, we talked about taking the same shortcut again. It wasn't exactly in the center of the alley, but there weren't any other buildings close by, and using the alley saved about 5 minutes compared to going around. This time, we didn't run. We walked slowly. As we passed by one of the houses near the alley, something caught our attention through a window. There was blood. It was splattered across the walls and smeared through the hallway inside the house. It wasn't subtle. It was everywhere. We didn't hesitate. We ran and called the police immediately. When officers arrived, everything escalated fast. Suddenly, the entire area was locked down. Yellow tape went up, police cars filled the street, and more officers kept arriving. There were people wearing shirts with large lettering on them. I couldn't tell what it said, but it was clear this was serious. Some individuals went into the house wearing hazmat suits, while the rest of us stood at a distance, watching in shock. I still think back to that night in the alley and that overwhelming feeling telling us to run. Knowing what we found the next day makes it even harder to ignore. Sorry for any spelling or phrasing issues. I used voice to text for this and didn't feel like typing it all out. We used to live in a small ancestral compound where several families stayed together. Our immediate family, extended relatives, and a few tenants renting rooms. Everyone knew each other. It was the kind of place where doors stayed open and people drifted in and out of shared spaces. In the early 2000s, nights were simple. The adults would gather in the living room to watch Filipino telenovelas while me and my cousins played cards in the corner, joking and arguing over nothing important. It felt close-knit, familiar, safe. One of the tenants was a college student. We called her Mary. She kept to herself most of the time, not rude, just distant. But a few weeks before everything happened, she changed. She barely left her room. When she did, she looked hollow, unfocused, like she wasn't really there. My mother noticed. She always did. She tried talking to Mary, asking how school was going, if she was okay, if anything was bothering her. Mary would answer vaguely and retreat back into her room. Then came that night. I remember it clearly. It was around 2 in the morning. Me and my cousins were outside watching our uncles prepare pigs for an event the next day. It was late, and my mom had already come out once to scold us, telling us to go to bed because it was past midnight. Then we heard the scream. Someone yelled that there was a baby in the backyard, a dead infant. The scene was horrific beyond anything a child should ever see. The baby had been hung using its own umbilical cord. Its neck was broken. A mop head had been forced into its mouth. The damage to the throat was severe. The body had been stuffed into a clear plastic bag, bloody and mangled. My mother rushed us inside immediately, trying to shield us, but I saw it. I saw that baby hanging near the dirty kitchen. That image has never left me. It was Mary. We realized it when we followed the trail of blood leading straight to her room. Later, we learned she had been terrified of her parents finding out she was pregnant. She had fallen into depression and was clearly not in a stable state of mind. By morning, her parents were there. Police arrived. Paramedics too. The details are hazy now, but I remember she was taken away, most likely to a psychiatric facility. What stayed with us didn't end there. Days later, people started whispering that my mother was being haunted. Our house was old, with large built-in cabinets and heavy wooden wardrobes. My mom began hearing things, soft crying sounds coming from inside the wardrobe, light footsteps moving through rooms when no one was there, faint crackling noises late at night. She also started seeing things. A child in the hallway, wrapped in a bloody plastic bag. We never understood why it was only happening to her. A few months later, we left the compound. None of us ever went back.